Hey guys, thanks for checking out The Film Geek. Today I'm talking about my 5 favorite so bad it's good films that aren't horror movies. Okay, so the rules of this list are very simple. Number 1, no horror movies. All these films on this list are going to be a comedy, drama, or something of that sort. Number 2, this is all my opinion. This isn't based off of anything Metacritic or Rotten Tomato, which honestly, I don't know how you could base this off of anything. Would it be like, which one of these has the worst Rotten Tomato score? Would number 1 be the one with the highest Rotten Tomato score? I mean, really, how do you rate a so bad it's good movie list? I mean, it's just basically opinions, period. One last rule, The Room will not be on this list. I feel like it gets enough exposure. I mean, for God's sakes, they made a movie and there's a book about how bad this movie is. So I decided to not include The Room on this list. Yes, it is a so bad it's good movie and it's wonderful. It's amazing. It's the perfect so bad it's good movie. And that's why it has its own movie about it, because it's good. So check it out. But you're not going to find it on my list. All of these movies on this list today are, they're deserving of their own spotlight films at some point in time. So I will get around to doing individual videos of this at some point in time. Okay, so let's get things started with number 5, and that is Howard the Duck. Howard the Duck is directed by Willard Huyck and is starring Leah Thompson and Tim Robbins. Okay, so we all know that Howard the Duck is the story of a duck from another planet who gets teleported to Earth and starts a band, right? Yeah, you guys have heard of this, yeah? Okay, produced by George Lucas? Yeah? That guy? Star Wars guy, George Lucas. Okay, now I'm gonna go to bat for this film, okay? Because I know it gets a lot of crap about how bad it is, and originally I really did think that this movie was absolutely terrible. For the longest time, I've always given this movie a lot of crap. I saw it when I was younger, and I didn't like it then. Well, as I got older and I finally sat down and I watched it again, I really changed my attitude on this film. What I thought was just a really crappy sci-fi film actually wasn't half bad as a comedy. Some of the things about the movie that are great, like the effects completely hold up, and just one little fact that I'd like to throw out is that George Lucas actually spent $2 million of his own money to make the costume of Howard. I found that pretty cool, and yes, Howard's costume looks amazing.
That's a duck! That's a duck, man!
And a lot of that has to do with the man inside the suit, and that is Ed Gale. He was the man who wore the Howard the Duck suit, and then the face was controlled off camera by numbers of puppeteers. So yeah, I don't think that Howard the Duck is necessarily a movie I would call before its time. I do think that a movie like this would have found a much bigger niche these days if it would have been released now. However, I still don't think that it would have really gone above a cult film. It's just too weird of a comedy, and there's a lot of subject matter in this film that a lot of people probably wouldn't find very appropriate no matter what the time period is. So that brings us to number 4. Number 4 is a movie that a lot of people think is an absolute tragedy and a complete and absolute waste of a license, and that is the Super Mario Brothers movie. Super Mario Brothers was released in 1993, starring Bob Hopkins, John Leguizamo, and Dennis Hopper as Koopa. Yeah, he doesn't play Bowser, he plays Koopa. It's a whole thing. Alright, so the thing about this movie is, I'm sorry guys, I think it's freaking awesome. Now I know a lot of you Nintendo kids out there, Nintendo guys, whatever you want to be called these days, you're all upset and mad. You think this movie is horrible and they destroyed the license and it's one of the worst freaking video game movies ever made. Dude, I was a Sega kid, so I did not have a Nintendo. I had a Sega Master System, I had an Atari 2600 before that, Genesis, and then a PlayStation. So, I don't have any emotional attachment whatsoever to the Super Mario Brothers franchise. That being said, I think this movie is awesome. I don't think it's a waste of a license. I think that the movie makers did the best they freaking could with this. I mean, come on, we're talking about a movie that the entire basis of this movie is a plumber who gets sucked down a pipe to go save a princess from a big turtle thing that breathes fire. So when you really break it down to what they had to work with, I honestly think this movie is awesome. And years later, Genesis did do what Nintendo can't, and that was actually release a much better licensed film with Sonic the Hedgehog. Number 3 is a movie that I saw in theaters when it first came out, and at first this was another movie that made me so mad when I saw it, and that is 2000's Dungeons and Dragons. Now, I talked briefly about the Dungeons and Dragons movie in one of my hunt videos where I found this out in the wild. I threw it onto this list because I feel like it's becoming well known as a so bad it's good movie, and I totally agree with it. Although there are things about this movie that are really awesome, let's get to the one reason that I am going to say that this movie is so bad it's good, and that is Jeremy Irons' performance.
Destiny. Come to me.
Okay, there's other things too, like plot holes in the narrative, and the dialogue in this is just god-awful, but Jeremy Irons is unbelievably fun in this movie. Like, he knew exactly what he was getting into, he knew exactly what this movie was, and he knew that he needed to go full Nick Cage. I mean, Jeremy Irons Nick Cage's this movie like no one else. Another thing that I really dig about this movie is that something that it actually failed at was telling a coherent story, but something that it excelled at was making it just like a D&D campaign. One of the things you kind of have to remember about D&D is that it's told by a guy who is not a professional storyteller by any means. I mean, especially, you know, if you're in high school or something like that. You don't know proper storytelling techniques and structure and things of all that sort. I mean, you got a good rough idea, but let me tell you guys, the plot holes and all the problems with the story and the script in this actually makes it feel like a real D&D campaign. Like, characters just kind of meet each other. There's no reason for it. They just bump into each other. Like, the dwarf character just like pops up and then, hey, let's go on an adventure together. I mean, I don't know how many times that I started a campaign with people and just said, so you're in a pub. And guess what? There's a pub scene in this too. Now, one thing I also want to point out is that yes, the CGI in this is god-awful, and it's really hard to watch. It really is. But the budget was so small. And yeah, so something else that makes it a so bad it's good is the CGI and the special effects in this look horrible. But it had a really small budget. One thing that I want to add into this is just a little tidbit, and we're moving on. Director Courtney Solomon actually spent 10 years of his life trying to get this movie made. He actually bought the rights to this film in 1990, and he spent 10 years trying to get studios to make this film. And, well, you know, once you learn how much of a labor of love this movie was, and how much he actually did really care about D&D, like I said, this thing could film a whole new spotlight video, so I'm not going to go any further. But let me just say that after learning a bit more about this movie, I gained a new appreciation for it. However, it still is a so bad it's good movie. Number 2 on this list actually made me say when I saw it for the first time in college, my God, I'm tired of looking at tits. And that is 1995's Showgirls. Directed by Paul Verhoeven, yes, director of RoboCop and Starship Troopers, comes a complete and absolute flop. This movie's also starring Elizabeth Berkley, yes, the Saved by the Bell Elizabeth Berkley, and Kyle MacLachlan, star of a lot of David Lynch films. Alright, so now I have nothing bad to say about Kyle MacLachlan, but I mean, come on, this just seems like the further adventures of Jessie if she just dropped out of high school. Was that her name, Jessie? I can't remember what her name was. I didn't really watch the show. Sorry, I'm one of those guys. I mean, I know it's out there, I know it exists, but and I have friends who watched it, but I seriously was not somebody who watched Saved by the Bell, my bad. So what makes this so bad it's good? I'm just gonna talk about the acting for 1 second. Holy crap, this is one of the most melodramatic bad movies I've ever seen in my life. Also, complete waste of characters. There's a character in this movie that really serves no purpose whatsoever. He shows up, teaches her to do something that I guess was dancing, then he has an affair and is gone. He just vanishes. I mean, it's a whole subplot that didn't even need to exist. At the opening night of this film, also, from what I understand, Kyle MacLachlan made it like halfway through and then stood up and walked out of his own movie, quoting later that he was couldn't believe that he was in such a bad movie. And I mean, guys, this movie is bad in all the right ways. This is definitely worth your time to check out. If you don't mind gratuitous nudity, and I do mean gratuitous nudity, it's a lot. It's a lot. Did I mention a lot of nudity in this film? It has an NC-17 and it earned it, but hey, don't not see it because of that, because my God, this movie is crazy. It's just the structure of the film and the fact that there is, again, there's no hero, there's no good guy in this film. Everybody, no, I take that back. There's one, and that's Molly, and you watch the movie and you'll see. But anyways, there is really no hero. Our actual hero of this film is just so horribly unlikable and just terrible, and that's Jessie from Saved by the Bell. And again, correct me in the comments below if it's not Jessie, but I'm pretty sure it's Jessie. But oh God, I mean, really, she's the only light at the end of the tunnel of this film. And then, I mean, okay, I'm not gonna go into it, but the movie goes into a really dark direction at one point, and it's just completely off-putting. But again, check it out. It is one of those things that it's just, oh God, this train wreck, you gotta see this, guys. Okay, so following up Showgirls, what could possibly follow a movie so bad as Showgirls? Well, that would have to be 1988's Mac and Me. Mac and Me was directed by McDonald's and Coke, and it tells the story of an alien that's found by a boy in a wheelchair, and they become friends, and then they find his parents, who are also crash landed on Earth, and in the end, they become American citizens, because, I mean, that's what you do. Oh, yeah, totally, sorry, forgot to say spoiler alert. So if you haven't seen Mac and Me, my bad for screwing up the ending. Oh, the mom and the dad, the family, they become American citizens, my bad. The movie's been out since 1988. Okay, so what makes this movie so bad it's good? This is a legendary so bad it's good movie. This movie is one of those things that it really has to be seen, and I feel awful about this movie. Way back when I saw this movie for the first time, it was around the late 80s, probably 89 or something. My mom was heavily involved in the Girl Scouts, and she'd taken two of my sisters on a camping trip. My youngest sister stayed home with myself and my dad, and these were times that my dad and I would rent movies that generally mom and my sisters didn't really want to watch, and so this was a good time, but we also had to think of Sarah, so we had to get a we had to get a kids movie for the little one, right? And so I totally did. I picked up Mac and Me. Sorry, sis. Okay, so Mac and Me, again, like I said, is a famously so bad it's good film. In fact, for the longest time, anytime Paul Rudd was interviewed on the Conan O'Brien show and he said he had a clip for his movie, no matter what it was, no matter what the film was, this is the clip they would see. So as a joke at the beginning of this, I said this film was directed by Coke and McDonald's. And that's not too awful far from the truth. They were heavily involved in the funding of this film. And I'm just gonna give you two examples of their involvement, and that is, number one, the aliens literally have to drink Coke to live. Yes, Coca-Cola brings them life. You see, on their planet, there's something they drink in these straw things that comes out of the ground, I guess, and it just happens to be Coca-Cola, all right? So apparently, I guess they come from Mars. I can't remember if they say they're from Mars or not, but apparently on Mars, the core is made of something resembling Coca-Cola, and that's what these aliens live off of. McDonald's is really heavily influenced in this also. One of the girls in this movie actually wears a McDonald's uniform for a good portion of the film, and there's a huge dance party at a local McDonald's they go to for a little girl's birthday party. Now, as a kid that grew up during the time period of the McDonald's birthday party, I can tell you right now, there wasn't dancing teddy bears and football players and any of that shit going on. It was mostly some minimum wage kid that just gave you a giant cupcake that kind of tasted like whipped cream. All right, guys, so that's my list. That was number one, Mac and Me. me, and I'm fairly certain that a lot of you watching this video have seen that film, but if you haven't, check it out. I'm sure it's out there to stream. I didn't look it up, but if it is, check it out. My God, you're gonna laugh your ass off at this movie. It is just god-awful. Alright guys, well that brings us to the end of another Film Geek video. Thanks again for checking me out. If you liked what you saw here today, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, hit that like, and ring that bell for notifications so you know when I put another one of these videos up. And also too, folks, keep watching movies. You know I'm gonna.